certainly got Kel Richards to do his homework. He's got some terrific words a bit later in the show. But first now to our panel. Joining me, the Menzies Research Centre's Nick Cater, former Liberal MP Nicole Flint, Nick and Nicole, there you go. Nick's squared. Welcome to the program. And Nick Cater, I'm going to start with you if I can. The PM got on his plane yet again. He loves that plane. He's almost Rudd-esque. This time he's in New Zealand, joined press conference with Chris Hipkins. Have a listen to this.
I want to acknowledge the significant shift in Australian climate change policy over the last year. We believe that working together to combat climate change globally and especially in our region is critical. It's the single greatest existential threat to the livelihoods, security and well-being of our Pacific partners.
I mean, seriously, Nick Cater, I reckon China is more front and centre than the existential threat of climate change.
Well, that's right. I mean, New Zealand, of course, you know, Jacinda Ardern said that she thought that climate change was a bigger threat than China. Well, she's wrong there. And when you're talking about climate change, if you're concerned about emissions, well, once again, China. I mean, China is adding more than our entire fleet of coal every year. So we cut back, they put it on. We're not actually doing much for the planet. And I think, you know, that's the usual sort of smug sort of remark you get when two climate change enthusiasts get together. But, you know, the real task is not setting a target, it's how to achieve it. And neither New Zealand nor the Albanese government has a slightest idea how they're going to manage it.
Yeah, and it's a pea and thimble trick in New Zealand too, because their greatest whack of emissions are methane emissions, but they've basically carved out their herd from any of their global assessments. So, I mean, it'd be like us not counting coal and not counting gas and all this other stuff. I mean, it's crazy. But I have to say, Nicole, he must, Chris Hipkins and his predecessor before, he must have Albanese over a barrel on something, because the New Zealanders have now got Australia to keep all the New Zealand criminals here. They've got us to change the rules on welfare, so New Zealanders here who aren't citizens get access to things they haven't got before. They want us to adopt their Maori co-governance model, which is what the Voice is by stealth if it gets up. We are almost a satellite state of New Zealand, I reckon.
Oh, I don't think things are quite that dire yet, Peter. But if we don't get rid of this federal Labor government at the next federal election, perhaps they might become that dire. Look, I think Australians have really woken up to how serious the ramifications of the Voice will be with all the rubbish we're seeing going on in Western Australia, including apparently local volunteer tree planters being stopped from planting trees to help the environment because an Aboriginal corporation was allegedly demanding $2.5 million before they're allowed to plant their trees. Look, Peter, let's hope that the message keeps getting out to Australians that the Voice is very dangerous. This is what it could lead to is, you know, co-governments or perhaps even a separate Aboriginal nation. But Peter, viewers also need to be aware that if the Voice fails, which we hope it does and the polls are saying it will, the Australian Parliament, the Senate, is currently considering the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which, if legislated, could potentially do all of these things as well. So we've got a lot of threats in this area coming at us, and we need to stay across them and keep pointing out the very serious ramifications if these things are passed into law.
Nick, you've been up in far north Queensland and you've looked at the shocking impact of foreign-owned wind farms, or any owned wind farms, I have to say, on the local environment and the local community. What can you tell us?
The Chilumban Forest is under threat from a wind industrial development, 86 giant turbines, in what is essentially native tropical dry eucalypt forest. We have a very limited amount of that, and it's very important in ecological terms. It's also the home of the rainforest people, as they call themselves, the local Aboriginal group there, and they feel a tremendous connection to that land. So that is where the big fight is. The other thing I found when I was up there, and I think you've got pictures on the screen at the moment, is old wind turbines that have just been left dumped in a quarry. The quarry owner says he's going to recycle them somehow or find some permanent use for them, but they've been there for several years, and it just goes to show there's nothing really renewable about wind turbines.
Nick, can I go to this issue in Queensland? The Premier there, Anastasia Palaszczuk, supporting a new push by the union, not for more sick leave per se, not for bigger annual leave and more paid parental leave, but for a whole new category of what she's calling paid reproductive leave. This is time off for menstrual issues, menopause issues, pregnancy loss, male health issues. Now, fair enough, I'm not saying that these issues aren't important issues, but we already have 10 plus days of paid sick leave a year, 4 weeks of annual leave. At what point are businesses basically going to pay us to do nothing at work?
This is hugely concerning, Peter, and I think what scares me more about this proposal is that who on earth is going to employ women? That's who, this is who this policy seems to be mainly aimed at and about. They sort of put some token reference to blokes in at the end of it. But people, especially small businesses, might end up too scared to employ women if they think that they'll need their sick leave plus all of this other leave that Palaszczuk is wanting to introduce. Peter, what really annoys me about this, because I've seen the Premier's comments, she's got endometriosis. Well, guess what? So do I. Hasn't stopped her doing her job, hasn't stopped me from doing my job. And what is critical here is not giving women more sick leave, but actually state and federal governments putting money into finding cures for chronic illnesses like endometriosis and better treatments. We don't want women sitting at home, not able to work, not able to participate in society, because state and federal governments are too lazy to actually fix the problem rather than just put a Band-Aid on it, which is giving more sick leave.
You are so right, and you have been a magnificent advocate on that issue, Nicole. You hit the nail on the head. Thank you both for your time, Nick Catt and Nicole Flint. See you both next week.